Hey there, welcome to my channel. The Renaissance is a period of history synonymous with artistic brilliance, scientific breakthroughs, and a rebirth of classical learning. Today we'll explore what sparked this transformative era, how it evolved over time, and why it remains so pivotal in shaping Western civilization. Now let's jump right in. The Renaissance emerged in 14th century Italy as a fusion of various factors that created a unique environment ripe for cultural and intellectual innovation. First, the rediscovery of classical antiquity played a vital role. As Renaissance humanists delved into the texts and philosophies of ancient Greece and Rome, they were inspired by ideals of humanism, which placed emphasis on human potential, civic virtue, and the pursuit of knowledge. This renewed interest in classical heritage sparked a desire to revive Greco-Roman art, architecture, and literature, leading to an outpouring of creative works. Second, the patronage system fueled the flames of Renaissance creativity. Wealthy families like the Medici in Florence and the Sforza in Milan provided generous financial support to artists, scientists, and scholars, allowing them to pursue ambitious projects and groundbreaking research without worrying about immediate financial needs. Patronage not only enriched cultural production, but also established a close relationship between the elite and the creative class. Third, the development of perspective and linear optics allowed artists to create three-dimensional representations of the world on two-dimensional surfaces, giving depth and realism to their paintings and sculptures. This innovative technique contributed significantly to the lifelike quality of Renaissance art, enabling artists to depict human emotions and experiences with greater accuracy. Fourth, the growth of trade and the rise of merchant class during the late Middle Ages created a prosperous economy that supported artistic endeavors. Italian city-states, particularly Venice, Genoa, and Florence, benefited from increased trade along Mediterranean routes, leading to an accumulation of wealth that was redirected toward cultural pursuits. This economic prosperity fostered an atmosphere of creativity and intellectual exploration. Finally, the Black Death, while devastating in terms of loss of life, paradoxically contributed to the emergence of the Renaissance by altering societal structures and values. The plague's impact on labor shortages, population decline, and religious questioning created a context for change. As the feudal system weakened and new opportunities arose, the stage was set for a cultural revolution that would redefine European history. In essence, the Italian Renaissance resulted from the confluence of classical influences, patronage, artistic innovations, economic growth, and the impact of the Black Death. These elements combined to produce a cultural movement that emphasized human potential, classical learning, and artistic excellence, laying the groundwork for the broader European Renaissance and the transition to modernity. As the Renaissance blossomed in Italy, its influence gradually spread throughout Europe, taking on distinct characteristics in each region. The early 16th century witnessed a flourishing of Renaissance ideals in Northern Europe, transforming art, literature, and intellectual discourse. In France, the reign of Francis I, who ruled from 1515 to 1547, marked a significant chapter in the French Renaissance. Francis's patronage played a pivotal role in promoting the arts, with notable architects like Sébastien Serlio and writers like François Rabelais leaving an enduring legacy. The French Renaissance also witnessed the emergence of a distinctive style in painting, exemplified by artists such as Jean Clouet, who specialized in elegant portraits of the French nobility. Germany's contribution to the Northern Renaissance was marked by the genius of Albrecht Dürer, a painter, printmaker, and theorist whose works showcased the region's emphasis on detail and craftsmanship. Dutch humanism found expression in the writings of Desiderius Erasmus, who championed a reform of the Catholic Church through education and scholarship. Erasmus' critical yet constructive approach to theology had a profound impact on the course of the Protestant Reformation. In England, the Renaissance initially faced challenges due to the political instability and foreign invasions that plagued the country during the 16th century. However, the reigns of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I saw the emergence of a distinctive English Renaissance with writers like William Shakespeare, Edmund Custis and Christopher Marlowe producing timeless works of literature that captured the era's spirit. The Spanish Renaissance, though less prominent than in other parts of Europe, made significant contributions to literature, particularly with the golden age of Spanish poetry, featuring renowned authors such as Garcilaso de la Vega and Luis de Góngora. Spain's vast empire also influenced the development of its art and architecture, as seen in the works of artists like Diego Velázquez, whose paintings often depicted scenes from everyday life within the Spanish colonial context. Across Northern Europe, the Renaissance witnessed a surge in artistic innovation, with German and Flemish artists pushing the boundaries of realism, detail, and subject matter. Painters like Hieronymus Bosch created enigmatic masterpieces that blended religious themes with fantastical imagery, while Peter Bruegel the Elder's landscapes and Jean Racine's offered intimate glimpses into peasant life. Furthermore, the introduction of oil paints and advanced techniques allowed artists to achieve greater precision and depth in their work. The focus on detail extended to scientific observation as well, with scholars like Andreas Vesalius revolutionizing the study of human anatomy through meticulous dissections and detailed illustrations. This attention to detail and realism became hallmarks of the Northern Renaissance, setting it apart from the more idealized forms of the Italian Renaissance. In conclusion, the European Renaissance was a multifaceted and transformative period that profoundly impacted art, science, and intellectual thought across the continent. From the classical foundations in Italy to its evolution in northern regions, this era marked a departure from medieval traditions and embraced humanism, classical learning, and artistic excellence. The Renaissance legacy continues to influence Western civilization, inspiring awe and wonder at the boundless potential of human creativity and inquiry. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to stay updated on our latest content. We would love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let us know what aspects of the Renaissance you found most fascinating. Additionally, if there are any historical topics you'd like us to cover in future videos, feel free to suggest them in the comments section. Your feedback is valuable to us and helps us create more engaging content for you. What if I told you that everything we know and understand about the world today can be traced back to a single period in history? A time when mankind shifted from superstitious beliefs to rational thinking, from mythological tales to scientific discoveries, from medieval norms to modern ideals. What if I told you that this transformative era was the Renaissance? Hi, everyone! Welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to explore how the Renaissance, one of the most influential periods in European history, laid the groundwork for our modern conceptions of science and exploration. So let's dive in. The Renaissance, a term derived from the French word meaning rebirth, signifies the reawakening of classical knowledge and culture to the perceived intellectual stagnation of the Middle Ages. Spanning roughly from the 14th to the 17th century, this era marked a pivotal point in history, setting the stage for the scientific and intellectual advancements that would shape the modern world. As we step into the realm of the Renaissance, we encounter a period that witnessed a surge in artistic brilliance, scientific inquiry, and a renewed interest in classical learning. Emerging in Italy during the 14th century, the Renaissance gradually spread across Europe, transforming artistic, scientific, and philosophical landscapes. Humanism, a key feature of the Renaissance, emphasized the potential and achievements of humankind, shifting focus from solely religious concerns to broader worldly matters. This intellectual movement celebrated classical antiquity, drawing inspiration from ancient Greek and Roman texts. The impact of humanism extended to various aspects of Renaissance life, including art, literature, and science. In art, the Renaissance saw a departure from the stylized religious works of the Middle Ages toward more realistic and human-centered depictions. Artists like Michelangelo and Raphael portrayed human forms with greater accuracy and emotion, reflecting humanist ideals. Likewise, writers such as William Shakespeare and Miguel de Cervantes created characters and narratives that explored the complexities of human nature and experience. In science, humanism encouraged a shift from accepting ancient authorities to direct observation and empirical evidence. This approach laid the foundation for the scientific revolution that would later transform our understanding of the natural world. One of the most significant contributions of the Renaissance to science was the development of the scientific method, a systematic approach to acquiring knowledge and understanding the natural world. Before the Renaissance, knowledge was often based on tradition, religious beliefs, or the teachings of ancient authorities. However, Renaissance thinkers began to emphasize observation, experimentation, and logical reasoning as the basis for scientific inquiry. This shift in thinking can be attributed to the works of philosophers such as Francis Bacon and René Descartes. Bacon advocated for inductive reasoning, which involves making observations, identifying patterns, and formulating general principles. He stressed the importance of experimentation and the collection of data to support or refute hypotheses. Descartes, on the other hand, championed deductive reasoning, which begins with established general principles and applies them to specific cases. He emphasized the use of mathematics and logic in scientific investigation. These two approaches, inductive and deductive, became cornerstones of the scientific method and profoundly influenced later scientists like Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Another important development during the Renaissance was the establishment of universities and academies dedicated to the advancement of knowledge. These institutions provided scholars with the freedom to pursue their studies and exchange ideas without the constraints often imposed by religious authorities. The Medici family in Florence, for instance, established the Platonic Academy, which became a center for the study of classical philosophy and literature. Similarly, the French King Francis I founded the Royal Academy of Sciences in Paris to promote scientific research and innovation. Such institutions played a crucial role in disseminating new ideas and encouraging collaboration among scholars. Furthermore, the Renaissance witnessed a significant increase in the production and dissemination of scientific instruments. The printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg around 1440, revolutionized the spread of knowledge by enabling the mass production of books and other materials. This innovation allowed scientific ideas to reach a wider audience more rapidly, fostering intellectual exchange across Europe. Additionally, advancements in optics, such as the invention of the telescope by Hans Lippershey in the Netherlands, opened up new possibilities for observing the natural world. This invention sparked a revolution in astronomy, allowing scientists like Galileo Galilei to make groundbreaking discoveries about the planets and stars. The Renaissance spirit of curiosity and discovery also fueled the Age of Exploration, a period of intensive maritime exploration and discovery driven by European powers during the 15th and 16th centuries. This era witnessed remarkable voyages of discovery by explorers such as Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Ferdinand Magellan, who ventured into uncharted territories, expanding European knowledge of the world and establishing global trade networks. The Age of Exploration was motivated by several factors, including the desire for new trade routes to Asia, the quest for wealth and resources, and the growing interest in global exploration. Renaissance ideas about geography, cartography, and navigation played a crucial role in these voyages. The rediscovery of Ptolemy's Geographia during the Renaissance provided Europeans with valuable geographical knowledge, including maps and descriptions of regions outside of Europe. This work, along with other geographical texts, inspired explorers to venture into unknown waters in search of new lands and trade routes. Moreover, advancements in cartography and navigation techniques enabled ships to travel more accurately and efficiently across the oceans. The introduction of the astrolabe, an astronomical instrument used for navigation, and improved compasses allowed sailors to determine their location and navigate more precise courses. These technological developments, combined with the growing confidence in European maritime capabilities, facilitated the Age of Exploration. The Age of Exploration had a profound impact on world history, connecting distant regions and fostering cultural exchanges. It led to the establishment of global trade networks, the exchange of goods, ideas, and people between the Eastern Hemisphere and the Americas. Furthermore, these voyages resulted in the discovery of new lands, including the Americas by Columbus in 1492, and the circumnavigation of Africa by da Gama in 1497, reshaping world maps and expanding European knowledge of the globe. The Age of Exploration also marked the beginning of colonialism. European powers sought to exploit the resources and labor of newly discovered lands. It led to the colonization of the Americas, Asia, and Africa, which had lasting consequences for global power dynamics and cultural landscapes. In conclusion, the Renaissance stands as a pivotal period in history, laying the groundwork for modern science and exploration. Through its emphasis on humanism, classical learning, and empirical inquiry, the Renaissance transformed intellectual and artistic landscapes. The development of the scientific method, the establishment of universities and academies, and the invention of printing and other instruments revolutionized the way knowledge was acquired and disseminated. The spirit of curiosity and discovery that characterized the Renaissance also fueled the Age of Exploration, a testament to humanity's insatiable thirst for knowledge and understanding. As we reflect on the enduring legacy of the Renaissance, we recognize the profound impact it has had on shaping our modern world. The scientific and exploratory endeavors of this era continue to inspire and guide us as we strive to unravel the mysteries of the universe and explore the boundless potential of human ingenuity. So what do you think? How else did the Renaissance shape our modern world? And what are some of your favorite examples of Renaissance art, science, or exploration? Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss out on our latest videos. A New Dawn for Humanity: How Humanism Ushered in the Renaissance. At the dawn of the Renaissance, a profound intellectual and cultural movement emerged that redefined humanity's place in the universe. This movement, known as humanism or humanism, was not merely a literary or philosophical trend, but a comprehensive revolution against the intellectual constraints of the Middle Ages. It placed human beings at the center of the cosmos, reviving the classical ideas of Greece and Rome and blending them with a new spirit of exploration and creativity. The influence of this movement was evident in every aspect of cultural life, particularly in art and philosophy, where it liberated the human mind from the dominance of traditional religious thought, not by rejecting religion, but by reinterpreting it through rationality and beauty. In the realm of art, humanism represented a radical shift in how artists viewed the world around them. Instead of focusing solely on religious themes, which had dominated medieval art, artists began exploring human nature in all its complexity. The human body became a subject of study and glorification, inspired by classical models that portrayed humans in both realistic and idealized forms. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael were no longer mere craftsmen serving the church, but became geniuses who studied anatomy, perspective, and light to create works that reflected the depth of the human soul. In philosophy, humanism restored value to rational thought and ethical principles drawn from Greek and Roman wisdom. Philosophers such as Petrarch and Erasmus advocated a return to the original texts of ancient thinkers, believing that understanding these texts could liberate the human mind from ignorance and superstition. Humanism emphasized the idea that humans could achieve greatness through knowledge and free will, laying the groundwork for enlightenment thought later on. The focus on education and linguistic eloquence also gave new momentum to the humanities, making literature, history, and the arts essential parts of intellectual life. The impact of humanism on the Renaissance was not merely a change in artistic subjects or philosophical approaches, but a transformation in worldview. It helped create a culture that valued individuality, creativity, and the pursuit of truth, making the Renaissance one of the most brilliant periods in human history. The seeds of humanism, classical influences, and rediscoveries. The story of humanism starts far from the bustling streets of Florence or the sun-drenched hills of Greece. It's a tale as old as civilization itself, The rediscovery of classical antiquity. As the Middle Ages drew to a close, European scholars began unearthing long-lost texts from Greece and Rome, awakening a curiosity about the civilizations that birthed Western culture. This wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a gradual process fueled by curiosity and the invention of the printing press, which made books more accessible and sparked intellectual debates across Europe. Key figures like Petrarch and Poggio Bracciolini scoured monasteries and forgotten libraries, unearthing manuscripts that had lain dormant for centuries. These texts weren't just dusty relics, they were keys to a world that celebrated human potential, logic, and civic duty, a stark contrast to the spiritual focus of medieval life. The works of Cicero, Virgil, and Horace, among others, became touchstones for a new way of thinking. Humanism wasn't about discarding religious faith, but about broadening the scope of human knowledge and understanding. It celebrated the achievements of past civilizations while embracing the potential of the human mind to explore, discover, and create. Humanist education, cultivating the well-rounded Renaissance man. Humanist education was the crucible in which the ideas of the Renaissance were forged. It wasn't confined to the hallowed halls of universities, but permeated all aspects of learning, from the classics to the sciences and arts. Central to this educational ethos was the Studia Humanitatis, or the study of humanity. This curriculum, championed by scholars like Erasmus, focused on subjects like grammar, rhetoric, poetry, and history. It aimed to cultivate a well-rounded individual, the quintessential Renaissance man, who could excel in various fields and contribute meaningfully to society. This approach marked a departure from the rigid religious focus of medieval education, opening the doors to a more comprehensive and balanced learning experience. Humanist educators emphasized critical thinking, the ability to analyze and interpret text, and the importance of cultivating virtue and ethical conduct. They believed in the power of education to shape not just the intellect, but the character of individuals and the course of society itself. This emphasis on a holistic education laid the foundation for many of the artistic and scientific advancements that would characterize the Renaissance, fostering a generation of polymaths who excelled in their chosen fields and pushed the boundaries of human knowledge and creativity. Humanism and the birth of Renaissance art. In the vibrant squares and sun-drenched streets of Renaissance Italy, humanism found its most dazzling expression in art. It wasn't merely a patron of the arts, but a driving force behind the revolutionary changes that transformed painting and sculpture. Artists like Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello weren't just brush wielders and marble masons. They were storytellers, philosophers, and anatomists all rolled into one. Humanism's emphasis on human potential and classical ideals inspired them to create works that celebrated the beauty and complexity of the human form. The grandeur of David's contrapposto pose, the harmonious proportions of the School of Athens, and the lifelike details of Michelangelo's prophets were not just aesthetic choices. They were affirmations of humanism's core values, showcasing the power and potential of the human spirit. But this wasn't confined to the canvas or stone. Humanism breathed life into the very techniques of art. Linear perspective, chiaroscuro, and sfumato became tools to depict depth, realism, and emotion, reflecting the humanist fascination with the intricacies of human experience. This fusion of classical ideals and scientific observation gave rise to some of the most iconic masterpieces of world art, making the era a testament to humanism's enduring legacy. Humanist philosophy, a Renaissance perspective. Humanist philosophy was the bedrock of the Renaissance, shaping not just its art, but its entire worldview. It wasn't a monolithic school of thought, but a tapestry woven from the threads of classical wisdom, Christian ethics, and the spirit of inquiry. Thinkers like Erasmus and more didn't just parrot ancient ideals, but adapted and reinterpreted them for the complexities of the modern world. For them, humanism wasn't about rejecting religion, but about enriching it with reason and ethics. Figures like Pico della Mirandola saw humans as divinely created beings capable of greatness through knowledge and free will. This emphasis on human agency laid the foundation for future Enlightenment philosophies. Humanist ethics weren't abstract. They were applied to everyday life, advocating for social reform, religious tolerance, and a commitment to public service. More's Utopia wasn't just a book, it was a blueprint for a better world. The fusion of classical humanism with Christian thought led to a rich theological debate with figures like Erasmus advocating for a simpler, more ethical Christianity that emphasized inner piety over outward rituals. This blend of intellectual rigor, ethical depth, and social consciousness made humanist philosophy a vital force during the Renaissance, influencing not just the era's thinkers, but its artists, scientists, and leaders. The enduring legacy of humanism, a beacon across the ages, as the Renaissance drew to a close, humanism didn't fade away. It evolved, adapting to new contexts while retaining its core values. During the Reformation, humanist ideas played a pivotal role, with thinkers like More and Erasmus advocating for a return to the simplicity and ethics of early Christianity. The scientific revolution also owed much to the humanist emphasis on observation, logic, and the power of the human mind. Figures like Leonardo da Vinci and Francis Bacon exemplified this fusion of humanist and scientific thought, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge through empirical investigation. Humanism's impact extended beyond Europe, influencing thinkers like Wang Yanming, who integrated humanist ideas into Neo-Confucianism, emphasizing ethics and individual potential within a societal context. In the face of challenges and changing times, humanism stood as a beacon of intellectual freedom, ethical responsibility, and the transformative power of knowledge. Its legacy continued to inspire movements for social justice, religious reform, and scientific progress, proving that the Renaissance wasn't just an era, it was a testament to the enduring human spirit of inquiry, creativity, and the relentless pursuit of a better world. Conclusion: humanism, the guiding light of the Renaissance. Humanism was more than just an intellectual movement. It was the beating heart of the Renaissance, guiding its art, philosophy, and spirit. From the meticulous brushstrokes of Michelangelo to the profound ethics of Erasmus, humanism found expression in every facet of this transformative era. It challenged conventional norms, celebrated human potential, and emphasized the importance of ethics and knowledge. As we reflect on the rich tapestry of the Renaissance, let us remember that it wasn't just about rediscovering the past, but about illuminating the future, proving that the human story is one of endless exploration, creativity, and the unwavering pursuit of a better world. If you enjoyed this journey through the world of humanism, don't forget to like and subscribe. And here's to the next adventure in the ever-evolving story of humanity. Florence, Italy. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you think about Florence? Is it art, fashion, history, food, or perhaps the birthplace of the Renaissance? Well, if you chose the last one, you're not alone. Florence was the cultural and intellectual heart of the Renaissance, a period in European history marking a transition from the Middle Ages to modernity. It was here in this Tuscan city that humanism, classical learning, and a renewed interest in ancient Greek and Roman culture took root and flourished. Today, we Lions explore why Florence became the birthplace of the Renaissance and what made it so special back then. So why was Florence considered the center of Renaissance innovation? We can identify several key factors that made this possible. The economic factor. During the Middle Ages, Florence was a powerful republic with a strong economy based on trade and industry. Located in the heart of Tuscany, it enjoyed a strategic position in the Mediterranean. Through its skilled merchants, Florence dominated banking and finance and was home to some of the wealthiest families in Europe, like the Medici. This wealth provided the necessary resources to invest in art and culture. Many wealthy merchants and noble families like the Medici became patrons of the arts, commissioning works from artists and providing them with financial support. They were not only interested in displaying their wealth, but also in enhancing their social and political status through their patronage. In fact, the Medici family played a crucial role in shaping the course of the Renaissance. Cosimo de' Medici, considered the unofficial founder of the Medici dynasty, took control of Florence in 1434. He was a shrewd banker and politician who used his wealth to gain power and influence in the city. His son Piero continued his father's policies and further expanded the family's wealth and influence. However, it was Piero's son, Lorenzo the Magnificent, who truly epitomized the Medici's role in promoting Renaissance culture. He was a true patron of the arts who lavished money on painters, sculptors, architects, poets, and other intellectuals. Under Lorenzo's patronage, Florence became a magnet for some of the greatest artists and scholars of the time. Another guild of Florence, the Arte della Lana, also known as the Wool Workers Guild, played a vital role in the economic and cultural development of Florence during the Renaissance. The Arte della Lana was one of the most powerful and influential guilds in Florence, controlling the production and sale of wool, which was a major industry in the city. Founded in the 12th century, the guild grew rapidly during the 14th and 15th centuries, amassing great wealth and power. The members of the guild, made up of wool merchants, traders, and manufacturers, were highly skilled professionals who understood the complexities of international trade and finance. They were also deeply involved in the political life of Florence, holding significant influence over the city's government and policies. The wealth generated by the guild allowed its members to become major patrons of the arts, commissioning works from some of the most renowned artists of the time. Some of the most iconic works of Renaissance art were funded by the Arte della Lana, including the famous paintings of the Annunciation and the Adoration of the Magi by Sandro Botticelli and the pulpit of the Baptistery of the Florence Cathedral by the sculptor Antonio Rossellino. But the guild's influence extended beyond the realm of art. They were also instrumental in promoting education and scholarship in Florence, founding schools and libraries that helped to foster the intellectual ferment that characterized the Renaissance. Perhaps most importantly, the guild's emphasis on quality and innovation helped to set Florence apart as a center of excellence in the production of woolens. This reputation attracted merchants and nobles from all over Europe who came to Florence to purchase high-quality wool products. This influx of wealth and prestige further solidified Florence's position as a cultural and economic powerhouse during the Renaissance. The political factor: Florence was a republic, which meant that power was in the hands of the people rather than a monarch. This led to a more open political system where ideas and debate were valued. Florence's republican institutions provided a platform for civic participation, albeit limited to a small group of elite male citizens. This atmosphere of civic engagement and political participation encouraged the exchange of ideas and the questioning of traditional authority, which was a hallmark of Renaissance humanism. For example, the Florentine Republic's commitment to civic virtue and public service inspired the work of civic humanists like Leonardo da Vinci, who celebrated the achievements of the Roman Republic and its contributions to law, public service, and civic duty. Another aspect of Florence's political structure that contributed to its status as the birthplace of the Renaissance was its relative peace and stability compared to other Italian states. While Florence was frequently embroiled in conflicts with neighboring states, it was able to maintain a stable internal political environment that allowed for cultural and intellectual pursuits to flourish. Moreover, the Republic's commitment to maintaining public order and security created an atmosphere of stability that was conducive to economic growth and cultural innovation. This stability enabled wealthy patrons like the Medici to invest their money in the arts and sciences without fear of disruption. The intellectual factor: Florence was home to a number of scholars and intellectuals who were eager to study the classical texts that had been preserved in monasteries and universities across Europe. These scholars, known as humanists, were interested in reviving the classical learning and culture of Greece and Rome, and they saw education as the key to understanding and preserving this heritage. They believed that a classical education could help individuals develop their full potential and lead to a better understanding of human nature and society. Humanists also emphasized the importance of studying history and the classics in order to preserve the cultural and intellectual achievements of past civilizations. They saw themselves as the inheritors of the classical tradition and were committed to passing on the wisdom of the ancients to future generations. One notable figure in this regard was Leonardo da Vinci, a Florentine humanist who is considered to be the father of Florentine humanism. Bruni's most famous work, The History of the Florentine People, is a masterpiece of Renaissance historiography that set new standards for the objectivity and impartiality of historical writing. Bruni's approach to history was heavily influenced by his classical education, and he sought to emulate the style and substance of classical historians like Livy and Tacitus. His work had a profound impact on subsequent historians and helped to establish Florence as a center of intellectual and cultural innovation during the Renaissance. Another important aspect of Florence's intellectual climate was the establishment of the Platonic Academy in the early 15th century under the patronage of Cosimo de' Medici. The Academy was named after the ancient Greek philosopher Plato and served as a center for the study of classical philosophy and literature. Members of the Academy, including Marsilio Ficino, discussed and debated a wide range of topics, including ethics, metaphysics, politics, and religion. Ficino, in particular, was a prolific writer who translated and commented on the works of Plato and other classical philosophers. He is best known for his interpretation of Plato's philosophy, which he synthesized with Christian theology in his book The Theology of Plato. The artistic factor Florence was home to many talented artists, architects, and sculptors who pushed the boundaries of their craft and experimented with new techniques and styles. One of the most important innovations of the Florentine Renaissance was the development of linear perspective, which was a technique used to create the illusion of depth and space in paintings and sculptures. This innovation allowed artists to create more realistic and immersive scenes, giving the viewer the sense that they were actually present in the scene being depicted. Filippo Brunelleschi, an Italian architect and engineer, is credited with inventing linear perspective. He demonstrated his technique by painting a view of the Florence Cathedral and its piazza on a panel, which he then placed at different angles to create the illusion of depth and perspective. This innovation had a profound impact on Renaissance art, influencing some of the most famous works of the era, such as Masaccia's The Holy Trinity. Another important innovation in Florentine Renaissance art was the revival of classical sculpture. During the Middle Ages, sculpture had been largely confined to religious themes and had become highly stylized and abstract. However, during the Renaissance, sculptors like Donatello began to experiment with more naturalistic and expressive forms, drawing inspiration from ancient Greek and Roman sculpture. Donatello's David, for example, was a revolutionary work that broke away from the stylized forms of medieval sculpture and introduced a new level of realism and expressiveness. In conclusion, Florence was considered the center of Renaissance innovation for several reasons. Its economic prosperity, thanks to its thriving merchant class and powerful banks, provided the necessary resources to invest in art and culture. Its republican structure allowed for a flourishing of ideas and civic engagement. Its intellectual curiosity, exemplified by the study of classical texts and the establishment of the Platonic Academy, fostered a spirit of inquiry and discovery. And its artistic genius, evident in the works of masters like Brunelleschi, Masaccia, and Donatello, revolutionized the way art was created and appreciated. All these factors combined to make Florence the ideal environment for the Renaissance to take root and flourish. Its legacy continues to inspire and amaze us today, reminding us of the transformative power of human creativity and innovation. In today's episode, we are going to look at how the rediscovery of Greek texts affected religious thought during the Renaissance. Hey everybody, if you're new here, welcome. This is a show all about the history of ancient Greece and the legacy of the Greeks in the world today. Let's get into it. When we think of the Renaissance, we usually think of artistic masterpieces, groundbreaking scientific discoveries, and daring voyages of exploration. But there's another side to this era that's just as important, a revolution in religious thought that forever changed the relationship between humanity and the divine. The catalyst for this transformation was the rediscovery of ancient Greek texts. But how did this happen? How did these long-lost writings resurface, and what impact did they have on people's beliefs and values? To understand the impact of Greek texts on religious thought during the Renaissance, we need to first explore how these texts were rediscovered in the first place. The story begins in the 15th century when the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire was crumbling under the pressure of Ottoman attacks. As the Turks advanced westward, Byzantine scholars fled to Italy carrying with them ancient manuscripts that had been lost to the West for centuries. This influx of Greek scholars known as the Greek or Byzantine Renaissance sparked the initial rediscovery of classical Greek literature and philosophy. The works of Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics were among the first to be translated from Greek into Italian and Latin, allowing Western scholars to access the original sources firsthand and compare them to the versions known in the Latin West. But the story doesn't end there. The expansion of European trade routes to the east also brought ancient Greek texts back to Western Europe. Merchants and explorers uncovered ancient libraries in the Middle East and North Africa, unearthing countless manuscripts that had been forgotten or ignored for centuries. This accidental discovery, driven by the desire for exotic goods and new trade routes, played a significant role in reviving interest in Greek culture. Another key player in the rediscovery of Greek texts was a group of Italian scholars known as the Humanists. Unlike their medieval counterparts, who focused primarily on theology and philosophy, the Humanists were deeply interested in the classical past. They saw ancient Greece and Rome as models of beauty and perfection, and they dedicated themselves to uncovering and preserving the classical texts. One of the most influential humanist scholars was Poggio Bracciolini, who embarked on a tireless quest to locate and translate ancient manuscripts. His efforts led to the discovery of several important texts, including the lost letters of Pliny the Younger and Quintilian's Institutio Oratoria. The rediscovery of Greek texts had a profound impact on religious thought during the Renaissance, challenging long-held beliefs and opening up new ways of thinking about the relationship between humanity and the divine. One of the most significant effects was the revival of Platonic and Neoplatonic thought. Plato, one of the most influential Greek philosophers, had written extensively on the nature of reality, the soul, and the pursuit of wisdom. His ideas had been known in the Latin West through medieval translations, but the rediscovery of his original works revealed a richness and depth that had been lost or ignored in the medieval period. What sets Plato apart is his unique approach to theology and metaphysics. While acknowledging the limitations of human reason, he delved into the realm of the transcendent, exploring concepts like the immortality of the soul and the existence of a higher realm of reality. Plato's work sparked intense debates among Renaissance theologians who grappled with the implications of his ideas for their own beliefs. The rediscovery of Neoplatonism, a philosophical system inspired by Plato's ideas, had an equally profound impact. Neoplatonists like Plotinus and Porphyry developed complex metaphysical systems that emphasized the importance of spiritual contemplation and the ascent of the soul toward the divine. For Renaissance thinkers, Neoplatonism provided an alternative to the dominant Aristotelian framework, offering a more mystical and intuitive understanding of the divine. Marsilio Ficino, a key figure in the Florentine Academy, translated and interpreted Plato's and Neoplatonic texts, making them accessible to a wider audience and influencing theologians like Savonarola and the young Martin Luther. Moreover, the recovery of Greek patristic writings played a crucial role in reshaping religious thought. Patristics refers to the teachings of the early Christian writers, particularly the Church Fathers, who were prominent in the 1st through the 7th centuries. Among the most influential were Origen, Gregory of Nyssa, and John Chrysostom. Their works, known in the Latin West mainly through medieval collections, were now studied in their original Greek, offering a richer and more diverse perspective on early Christianity. What sets the Greek Church Fathers apart is their engagement with contemporary philosophical ideas and their willingness to challenge conventional thinking within the Church. They grappled with complex theological issues, such as the nature of Christ and the relationship between faith and reason, laying the foundation for ongoing theological debates during the Renaissance. Beyond these theological discussions, the rediscovery of Greek texts had a broader impact on religious practice and experience. For instance, the works of Greek Stoics like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius were rediscovered during the Renaissance, offering a new perspective on ethics and the human condition. The Stoics emphasized the importance of virtue, self-control, and acceptance of fate, ideas that resonated with Christian thinkers who were seeking to integrate classical wisdom with Christian teachings. In addition, the study of Greek literature and mythology became popular among Renaissance elites, leading to a surge in classical themes and motifs in art and literature. Artists and writers drew inspiration from Greek myths and legends, creating masterpieces that blended classical aesthetics with Christian symbolism. This cultural synthesis reflected the Renaissance's broader tendency to harmonize ancient wisdom with contemporary faith, while also sparking controversies, as some church authorities viewed the integration of pagan ideas as a threat to orthodoxy. Furthermore, the renewed interest in Greek culture and language led to a proliferation of vernacular translations of religious texts, making them more accessible to the general public. Erasmus's translation of the New Testament into Greek and his critical edition of the Greek New Testament were instrumental in this regard, fostering a more literate and questioning public that was better equipped to engage with religious texts directly. This growing accessibility encouraged individuals to cultivate a more personal relationship with the divine, prioritizing inward contemplation and spiritual experience over institutionalized doctrine. The impact of Greek texts on religious thought during the Renaissance was nothing short of revolutionary. It marked a departure from the rigid scholasticism of the medieval period and paved the way for a more dynamic and pluralistic intellectual landscape. By providing new tools for understanding the relationship between humanity and the divine, Greek texts helped lay the groundwork for both the Reformation and the eventual development of modern secular thought. The rediscovery of Greek texts during the Renaissance had a profound impact on religious thought in Europe. It challenged traditional beliefs, inspired new interpretations of scripture, and fostered an environment of intellectual inquiry that would eventually contribute to the Reformation and the broader evolution of Christian theology. By providing fresh perspectives and raising fundamental questions about the nature of God, the soul, free will, and the relationship between faith and reason, Greek texts like those of Plato, Aristotle, the Neoplatonists, and the early Church Fathers offered a departure from the dominant Aristotelian framework of medieval theology. The influence of Plato's mystical and introspective approach to the divine, along with the reemergence of Neoplatonism, challenged the prevailing scholastic emphasis on logic and systematization, leading to debates and reevaluations of religious doctrines. Additionally, the recovery of Greek patristic writings provided early Christian voices that diverged from medieval orthodoxy, encouraging scholars to revisit foundational religious questions and prompting calls for a return to the original sources of Christianity. The rediscovery of Greek texts also had indirect effects on religious thought through the revival of Greek scientific and philosophical ideas, which sometimes conflicted with Christian cosmology and ethics. This tension stimulated dialogue between faith and reason and compelled theologians to reconsider the compatibility of ancient wisdom with contemporary religious beliefs. Moreover, the rise of vernacular translations and the growing accessibility of religious texts encouraged individuals to engage with Scripture in new ways, fostering a more personal and experiential approach to spirituality. In conclusion, the impact of Greek texts on religious thought during the Renaissance was nothing short of transformative. By reintroducing forgotten knowledge and challenging established doctrines, these texts fueled intellectual inquiry, inspired fresh interpretations of Scripture, encouraged a more critical and introspective approach to religious belief. The rediscovery of Greek text stands as a pivotal moment in the history of religion, marking the transition from medieval scholasticism to a more dynamic and pluralistic intellectual landscape that would shape the course of Western civilization. Hello, welcome to this channel, and today we're going to look at the European Renaissance and its effects on society and politics. So if you're ready to get those brain cows milked, let's get to it. Okay, first let's talk about the Renaissance. And before you click off because you think you know all about the Renaissance, stick around. We're going to do something a little different with this video than usual. First, we will breeze through the basics of what you need to know about the Renaissance, and then we lines dig into the juicy details that you won't find in most textbooks. If you want even more detail, check out the link in the description for our full course, The Heart of the Matter. So the European Renaissance was a period in European history marking the transition from the Middle Ages to modernity, beginning in Italy during the 14th century and spreading northward. It was a rebirth of classical antiquity, drawing inspiration from Greek and Roman culture. Unlike the medieval period, the Renaissance witnessed significant social and political changes, including a shift towards humanism, questioning of religious dogma, and the rise of individualism. One of the biggest changes during the Renaissance was in the realm of ideas. The Renaissance marked a departure from the medieval worldview centered around religion and the belief a divinely ordained social hierarchy. Instead, Renaissance thinkers emphasized human potential, achievement, and the importance of understanding the natural world. This shift in thinking was part of a broader intellectual movement known as Humanism. Humanists studied classical texts, seeking to revive the ancient Greek and Roman ideals of civic virtue, public service, and the pursuit of knowledge. They believed that humans, through their reason and experience, could understand and improve their lives and society. This emphasis on human agency would have a profound impact on politics and would eventually lead to the rise of democratic ideals. Another significant change during the Renaissance was the growing importance of the individual. As society shifted from a feudal system to a more urban and commercial economy, people began to be defined by their individual talents and accomplishments rather than their social status. This change is reflected in the arts, where artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo became renowned for their unique styles and groundbreaking works. The Renaissance also saw the rise of the printing press, which had a profound impact on society and politics. Invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century, the printing press allowed for the mass production of books, making knowledge and ideas more widely available to a broader audience. This development helped to break the monopoly of the Catholic Church on education and religious thought, contributing to the Protestant Reformation and the spread of humanist ideas. In terms of politics, the Renaissance witnessed a move away from feudalism toward more centralized and rational forms of government. While monarchies remained powerful, Renaissance rulers like Niccolò di Niccoli and Isabella d'Este in Italy and Francis I in France actively engaged in politics, often acting as patrons of the arts and learning. This shift toward more active and enlightened forms of rule would culminate in the concept of the social contract during the Enlightenment. As we mentioned earlier, the Renaissance also had a profound impact on art. Renaissance art is characterized by its realism, naturalism, and attention to detail. Artists like Raphael, known for his Madonnas, and Titian, renowned for his mythological paintings, drew inspiration from classical antiquity and the natural world. During the High Renaissance, artists pushed the boundaries of perspective, anatomy, and composition, creating works that celebrated human beauty, achievement, and the grandeur of the natural world. Finally, the Renaissance was a truly pan-European phenomenon, encompassing various regions and countries, each with their own unique characteristics. While Italy is considered the birthplace of the Renaissance, it spread to northern Europe, transforming cities like Florence, Venice, Genoa, and Bruges into centers of trade, learning, and cultural innovation. The Northern Renaissance, with figures like Albrecht Dürer and Hans Holbein, added new dimensions to art, incorporating religious themes and reflecting the social and political changes taking place in Northern Europe. Now that you have the basic Renaissance facts down pat, let's dig into some of the juicier details. In this section, we'll explore how Renaissance ideas affected society and politics and how the Renaissance itself evolved over time, Let's get started. Okay, so one of the most important things to remember about the Renaissance is that it wasn't just an art movement or a time period. It was a whole new way of thinking about the world. This change in thinking is often referred to as Renaissance humanism. Humanist thought emphasized the value of classical learning, the potential of humanity, and the importance of civic virtue and public service. Humanists rejected the medieval emphasis on religious dogma and the supernatural, instead advocating for a more rational and empirical approach to understanding the world. This shift in thinking had profound implications for society and politics. For example, humanists argued for a more active role for citizens in government and championed the idea of individual liberty and self-determination. They also promoted education and the study of classical languages, which helped to break the monopoly of the Catholic Church on education and religious thought. Now, this changing way of thinking didn't happen in a vacuum. In fact, it was greatly influenced by several key factors. One major factor in the development of Renaissance humanism was the rediscovery of classical texts, particularly the works of ancient Greek and Roman philosophers and writers. As Renaissance scholars rediscovered these texts, they were inspired by the classical emphasis on human potential, civic virtue, and the pursuit of knowledge. These classical ideas, along with new discoveries in science, mathematics, and astronomy, challenged the prevailing medieval worldview and inspired a more rational and empirical approach to understanding the world. Another important factor was the rise of a merchant class, which emerged during the late Middle Ages as trade expanded and cities grew. This new class of merchants and bankers was less dependent on the traditional feudal system and had more economic and political power than their medieval counterparts. The merchant class was instrumental in the development of Renaissance humanism. They valued education, classical learning, and the pursuit of knowledge, which helped to promote a more intellectual and philosophical approach to understanding the world. Finally, the Renaissance was also shaped by significant changes in society and politics. The decline of feudalism and the rise of centralized monarchies created new opportunities for social mobility and economic advancement. Additionally, the increasing power of the merchant class and the growth of cities and trade networks led to a more urban and commercial economy. These changes in turn influenced the development of Renaissance humanism, which emphasized the potential of humanity and the importance of civic virtue and public service. Overall, the rise of humanism during the Renaissance represented a significant shift in thinking that had profound implications for society and politics. By emphasizing the value of classical learning, the potential of humanity, and the importance of education and civic engagement, humanist thought helped to pave the way for the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, and the rise of modern democracy. And while humanism was an important driver of the Renaissance, it wasn't the only one. Political changes were also afoot. For example, many Renaissance rulers sought to emulate the classical ideals of civic virtue and public service, and they often did this by becoming patrons of the arts and learning. This practice not only supported the flourishing of Renaissance culture, but also helped to legitimize their role. By associating themselves with the classical ideals of excellence and perfection, Renaissance rulers presented themselves as virtuous and enlightened leaders. Meanwhile, the growing power of the merchant class also had significant implications for politics. As merchants and traders accumulated wealth and influence, they began to demand greater political participation and representation. This growing middle class would eventually challenge the traditional power structures of feudalism and contribute to the rise of parliamentary systems and representative government. But hold on a minute. Did we just say that the Renaissance was responsible for the rise of democracy? Well, not exactly. While Renaissance ideas about human potential and civic virtue did lay the groundwork for democratic ideals, it would take centuries for these ideas to fully materialize. Nevertheless, the Renaissance did represent a significant step toward democracy. By emphasizing the importance of education and individual liberty and promoting the idea of a more active and engaged citizenry, Renaissance humanism helped to create a climate in which democratic ideas could flourish. So there you have it, folks. The Renaissance was much more than just a time of great art and culture. It was a period of profound social and political change that laid the foundations for the modern world. From the rise of humanism to the decline of feudalism and the growth of the merchant class, the Renaissance witnessed significant transformations that shaped the course of European history. And while it would take centuries for these ideas to fully materialize, the seeds of democracy and individual liberty were sown during this transformative era. Okay, that's what you need to know about the European Renaissance and its effect on society and politics. Click here to keep reviewing for Unit 3 and don't forget to subscribe.